All right, so this story is a couple of days old, but since it involves both Donald Trump's mugshot and Jessica Tarlov, who is the lone sane voice on the Fox Propaganda Network's primetime lineup, and we here at Pondering Politics are the unofficial Jessica Tarlov fan club, I thought we would talk about it. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. All right, so again, as you know, late last week, I think it was Thursday evening, Donald Trump surrendered himself to Fulton County, Georgia, and he was fingerprinted and got his mugshot. And the mugshot's gone viral. So many people on the right are trying to spin it as a Trump win because he's fundraised, I think, millions of dollars off that mugshot over, a period of time. But usually Donald Trump's a pretty reliable fundraiser. And since he has to dedicate those funds to his various legal challenges, because, of course, he's not really using it to campaign so much as he is trying to bilk his followers, many of whom are poor or working class, for all their worth in order to help himself personally. He's trying to exploit the mugshot for everything it's worth. Now, after the mugshot was taken, the Fox Propaganda Network reacted to it. Specifically, in this video, we're going to talk about the five, which is when Jesse Waters, Greg Gutfeld, Judge Jeanine Pirro, and usually Dana Perino, these right-wing reactionaries of varying levels of crazy, where they fawn and gush over the latest fascistic thing that MAGA does, and then they usually have one liberal commentator there to refute them, because, of course, God forbid it be a 2v2 or a 3v3, right? There's nothing that the Republican Party loves more in their surrogates in the media than an unfair or asymmetric battleground, so to speak. But Jessica Tarlov, who is the primary liberal co-host, she's the one who's there the most, she does an excellent job, despite being outnumbered, of, taking them all on. As I often say, it's like Optimus Prime in the second Transformers movies. I'll take you all on. And she's just facts and rebuttals and fact checks. She's a machine. So anyway, they discussed this mugshot. And, of course, Jessica Tarlov had some interesting commentary with respect to, how the general public was reacting to this. And then Jesse Waters, again, Fox News is their latest attempt to Tucker Carlson. He had some weird things to say. So the commentary goes from robust, Jessica Tarlov, to really weird, Jesse Waters, and we're going to play both clips. This one is, of course, from Jessica Tarlov. Take it away, Jess.
From the point here, which is that Donald Trump was indicted in 4 jurisdictions around this country by juries of regular Americans in New York, in D.C., in Atlanta, and in South Florida, where he calls home. This wasn't Joy Reid and Rachel Maddow sitting there. It was regular people who listened to the evidence that was brought before them. When you say that people...
So actually, that's a good point. We're going to interrupt it there. And again, I know some people in the comments section don't like the fact that I interrupt, but this is a commentary show. I'm not here to just play the clips. I'm also here to add my own opinion to the mix. So Jessica Tarlov makes an interesting point. So often the media, and not just right-wing media for that matter, I myself am guilty of it to some extent when I say that Jack Smith has indicted Donald Trump. That is not quite accurate, because technically the indictments are coming from a grand jury, right? And a grand jury is comprised of American citizens, not, as Jessica Tarlov points out, liberal commentators. It's not like MSNBC is engaging in a round panel with Jack Smith and saying, hey, we think you should do this. A grand jury is impaneled of citizens within the district that the grand juries convene. And then they make the decision. So it is everyday Americans who made the decision based on the evidence presented to the grand jury. Yeah, you should bring charges against Donald Trump. So she's correct to point that out. Because again, the Fox Propaganda Networks, they're like, Joe Biden is indicting Donald Trump, or Jack Smith is indicting Donald Trump. The weaponized DOJ is indicting Donald Trump. When in reality, Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, is simply deferring to the recommendations made by grand juries. So, important distinction. Carry on, Jess.
People are rallying behind him. His diehard base is, but the average American isn't. There's new polling out today. 62% think he committed a crime, including 67% of independents. 61% thinks that he must stand trial before the election. Why? Because you don't want to put someone in office who's going to jail. And 59% think that the DOJ is being fair. That shoots straight through the argument that this is a two-tiered system of justice.
Those are some great statistics that Jessica Tarlov is pointing out, because here's the thing, and as I've discussed before, the political environment in the United States is still pretty sobering. It's embarrassing to some extent that those stats are not even higher than what they are, that it's not 90% of people who believe, based on the evidence presented, that Donald Trump committed a crime, and 90% think that the charges are serious, and 90% want to see a trial develop and then conclude before Election Day. It's sad that the margins are still as big as they are. But decisive majorities, very clear majorities, think that Donald Trump committed a crime, that Donald Trump should be indicted for those crimes, and that the Department of Justice is being fair, for which there's considerable evidence. As a matter of fact, as we've discussed in previous videos, there's considerable evidence that the DOJ has bent over backwards to accommodate Donald Trump, which is in and of itself unfair. It's just unfair in the opposite direction. But that's good. And her Fox propaganda co-hosts don't want to say, they don't want to hear that, because they simply want to appeal to the 30 to 40% who say, no, these are baseless charges. He did nothing wrong. He's a saint. He's our Messiah figure. And so it's good that she's shutting that down.
If you don't like that Joe Biden is fundraising off of it, Donald Trump is doing the same thing. He's having his moment. Mitch McConnell even, remember, he fundraised off Cocaine Mitch. From the point here,
so again, great point. The Fox Propaganda Network, they're upset that that the five, as a matter of fact, were very upset that President Biden came out with the cup of Joe coffee mug or whatever. It was just a 5-second clip. Trump wasn't mentioned. It had nothing to do with Trump, but they were so upset. How dare he? They clutched their pearls and were mock scandalized over the idea that President Biden would engage in some sort of like tongue-in-cheek memery for his own campaign. But he's entitled to do that, and they would never hold Donald Trump when he was in the White House or when he wasn't in the White House to the same standard. And again, that goes back to the asymmetry of expectation. The right wants Joe Biden to be perfect at all times, perfect as they define it, and two, perfect in ways that are often self-contradictory. If Joe Biden is too formal, then he's not empathetic. If he's too empathetic and too silly, well, he's not formal enough. It's a lose-lose situation in which they're trying to put him. So the correct response for you and I is simply to reject the premise. Like, no, we're not going to adhere to that double standard. If it's okay for Donald Trump to fundraise off, the current political climate, it's certainly okay for Joe Biden to do the same thing. And no, I'm not going to hold Joe Biden to a higher standard than Donald Trump simply because it's convenient for you. All presidents, all public officials should be held to the same Uncle Ben standard. With great power comes great responsibility. And we're not going to grade Republicans on a curve. And we're going to actually make fun of you for trying to suggest that we should, because it's pathetic and something only losers do. But the other clip I want to play is from the same conversation. This time it's from Jesse Waters. Okay, now this one is a bit strange, so brace yourselves.
I am now going to book the Fulton County photographer for my Christmas card. Because, Judge, and I say this with a unblemished record of heterosexuality, he looks good. And he looks hard. And
okay. All right, Jesse. Listen, hey, you know what? That's what does it for you. That's great. You know what? I'm sure that there's some sort of attraction out there for oranges. Like, I don't know. There's some sort of fetish out there for sentient, sapient oranges like Donald Trump. But that was just a strange comment to make. Just like, he looks hard. What's that even mean? What do you mean he looks hard? And by the way, I'll be the first to cop to it that the mugshot is not like the worst one I've ever seen by any stretch of the imagination, and quite frankly, wasn't as bad as I expected it would be. But I wouldn't say it looks good, and I certainly wouldn't say that you would want that to be your wedding photographer. It's very strange, very cultish, very fawning, but that's really all that they can do in this situation, because the fact of the matter is their cult leader, the front runner of the party that they worship, the party of allegedly Christian values and family values and law and order. That's a mugshot of him being arrested for attempting to steal an election from his rival. So when you can't win on the facts, you might as well just cope and say, damn, he looks good. He looks hard. Anyway, strange sentence from Jesse Waters, but I enjoyed that exchange. We're a couple of days late on it, but I wanted to play it because, again, it was just a great back and forth and a great contrast between the substantive commentary from Jessica Tarlov on the left and whatever the hell that was from Jesse Waters on the right.